Hello, Assalamu alaikum.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum, Nadali. I hope guys I'm audible. We're going to start in 1 minute. The first two speakers were Itza Faisal and Ofan. They have privately sent me their recording and the recording that they had to about the debate, right? So we're going to start randomly, right? I'm going to pick random people from within this meeting as of right now. Then they're going to speak either in favor or either against, depending upon what they were allotted, right?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, Nadali.
Sir, can I please have a feedback of what happened yesterday because I couldn't join.
Okay, we just basically introduced what the speech education is, what it means, the benefits, etc. There's a slideshow that I can send you personally, so you can overview it yourself personally, right?
Okay,
So,
and sir, by the way, when can I do the diagnostic?
you can't attempt the diagnostic that was sent in yesterday, but the new diagnostic that I'm going to give you, it's shorter than before, but that's
Okay.
within the group.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, sir.
Yeah. Yes, Taha.
So could I receive that slideshow as well? I too was not present in yesterday's meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. I'll send that to you as well. Okay. Without further ado, let's first have. Uh, I'm going to randomly select. I hope everyone is now prepared for their turn. I would now have. Obviously, people who submitted or I named them afterwards, they're going to speak at the end because they had little time. I'm going to select speakers from the original list. So let's just first have. Let's go with. Do we have? Let's have Ramesh.
Sir, can you hear me?
Yeah,
So may I begin?
sure.
So the topic for today's debate is death penalties, and I will be speaking in favor of the topic. Whenever we talk about death penalties, the first thing that crosses our mind are extreme crimes such as rape and murder. These death penalties are not a new form of punishment, rather, these were the norm before the invention of proper prison systems. These were practiced all over the world in different times and different civilizations. The earliest examples date back to the 18th century before Christ, and the first ever case of hanging was reported in colonial America in 1608, which means this is not a new form of punishment. Death penalties do not directly influence the rate of crime or nor they increase it. Rather, they induce psychological effect in the mind of the lawbreaker that they're going to be hanged or they're going to lose their life. While talking about from a perspective of the regulatory authorities, by executing a criminal of a gang or a group may break the chain of communication between them, which may lead to a decrease in crime rate since there's no longer a criminal to act upon the command of their leaders. in in While talking about imprisonment, or not all prisons are built equally, nor they are impeccable in construction, which may allow the criminal to escape from the prison if they're in prison. An example would be the Alcatraz prison break, which was regarded as one of the most secure prisons in the United States, but still a group of four men were able to escape from the prison. Secondly, capital punishments also bring a possibility of bring an end to the possibility of the criminal committing another crime since they are dead. These not on these punishments do not only uh, these punishments also induce mental suffering for the prisoner, as the prisoner knows that he is going to give up on his life anytime soon. And which forces the criminal into a state of guilt. Finally, capital punishment is a preventive measure in the underdeveloped countries and the method of providing justice in stopping anarchy. If it is abolished, the families of the victim will seek revenge on their own, which means that they will lose their trust in the law systems. To sum it all up, it is a fair punishment for the extreme crimes, but it does not affect every criminal, such as the suicide bombers who who are purposely going to lose their life. Thank you.
All right. Just a very quick feedback. It was a brilliant speech. It had in retrospect, in retrospective element, it had very good points. Okay, let me just select a new person. Uh, so we're done with three speakers. Let's have Hamad Asif. Let's have Hamad Asif.
Okay, am I audible? Am I audible?
You are audible.
Okay, so I'll be speaking in the favor of this topic. First, a reminder of the basic argument behind retribution and punishment. All guilty people deserve to be punished, and only the guilty people deserve to be punished. Finally, guilty people deserve to be punished in a proportion of the severity of their crime. Imposition of appropriate punishment in the manner in which the courts respond to the society's cry for justice against the criminals. It's often supported with the argument an eye for an eye. But to argue like that demonstrates a complete misunderstanding of what that Old Testament phrase actually means. In fact, this testament means that only the guilty should be punished, and they should be punished neither too leniently or too severely. Punishment is often justified with the argument that by executing convicted murders, we will deter would be murderers from killing the people. For example, the execution by hanging of Yaqub Memon for his part in the 2003 Mumbai bombing invites us to revisit the vexed issue of capital punishment. Death penalty provided in law is basically for the betterment of the society and peaceful atmosphere, sense of protection in the mind of the citizens, and also deterrent factor for the wrongdoers. If death penalty provided for certain serious crimes, that will arrange the smooth running of the society, and it knows that in case of culpable homicide amounting to murder, he will have to face the consequence of losing his own life. He will refrain from committing such act. If someone commits an act which comes to a definition of high treason that may disintegrate the state itself, he should know that what may be the consequences of committing high treason. In a Muslim country like Pakistan, the injunctions of Quran and Sunnah provide a sentence of death for causing death to discontinue the death penalty, may be against Quranic injunctions. And in Pakistan, no law repugnant to Quran and Sunnah may be implemented and acted upon. The argument states that the real justice requires people to suffer for their wrongdoing and to suffer in a way appropriate for the crime. Each criminal should get what their crime deserves, and in the case of a murderer, what their crime deserves is death. In my opinion, in order to maintain peace, tranquility, and smooth running of the civilized society, and death penalty is necessary. Otherwise, the fabric of the society as a whole will be damaged, and ultimately, the ratio of commission of acts cause death to people, the commission of acts that actually cause death to people, acts of high treason, and other heavy, heaviest crimes will be increased. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ahmad. Brilliant speech. I'm honestly impressed until right now. You guys had very limited time, but the speeches are coming in very nicely. Let's have Ayan.
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Okay, you can start speaking.
Okay, sir. So, sir, basically, like I'm in favor for the death penalty because the death penalty makes it impossible for criminals to commit crime over and over again. Executing someone permanently stops the worst criminals and means we can all feel safer, as they can't commit any more crimes. If you murder someone, you don't you lose the right to stay alive? Plus, if people know they might be executed for committing a crime, aren't they less likely to do it? The death penalty is also known as a capital punishment. Capital punishment benefits society because it makes it makes people less likely to commit the crime. If the losses society imposes on criminals are less than those the criminals imposed on their innocent victims, society would be favoring criminals, allowing them to get away with bearing fewer costs than their victims had to bear. Since the death penalty is quick, painless, and humane, the methods of execution have gradually become more humane over the years. The argument that the death penalty is cruel and unusual is not valid. Even it helps provide families of victims with some closure, which may help them to deal with their suffering. Retribution is a necessary part of the punishment process. Without it, the friends and family of the victims, as well as the public in general, would not feel that justice had been served. Sometimes it becomes obligatory for criminals to have a death penalty, like the report from Robert Blacker, who describes that there are two types of criminals who are the worst of the worst. He went around the US meeting at least 100 of the death penalty prisoners and describes two types of prisoners who deserve to die and meet justice itself. While stating his statement, he also stated about Aristotle's quote saying that evil lies at the extreme. Now, the first type of criminal he describes are the cold, callous, wanton killers who feel nothing. Then there are the criminals like Danny Walling, who are sadistic serial killers who raped, tortured, and mutilated their victims, who felt thrill and enjoyment while doing this. And these people deserve to die. So I am basically in favor to the death penalty, that it should be justified and criminals should learn their punishment and prove a point to society that such actions should not be committed at all.
Thank you so much, Ayan. That was a very, very, very good speech again. It had some of the examples that I was looking forward to that some of you might bring. So you brought those up, and a very, very good speech at the end. I would advise everyone to read the critique that I'm giving generally for everyone. If you want a personal critique towards what you said, you can obviously private message me. Let's have Arslan.
Right. So I'm giving a speech against the death penalty. Right. So let's ask the first basic question. What is life? Well, we are, as people, as conscious living things, life as we define it. We perceive life in our own way, so much so that we do not understand each other at all. Nor do we understand the problems or trials that each of us are put through. You all make mistakes. Mistakes are a part of life, and dare I say, part of what makes us human. It is understandable that we establish law. Law is what makes order. But do we forget the basic principles of humanity when we go into law? It is foolish to presume so, because such is the case of severe brutalities that law brings about. Our infatuation with order has led humanity to presume the role of the lawbringer and inflict upon one another extreme acts due to their mistakes, which lead to their unfortunate demise. Punishment in its own place, and we do not say punishment is wrong. No, not at all. It is perfectly fine and even necessary to maintain order. But severe fatal brutalities take away the premise of a punishment. If you want to teach someone a lesson, they need to be around to learn from their mistakes. And if they break the law intentionally, then completely killing them off is a barbaric solution and to a problem that can otherwise be solved easily. The death penalty, or as we know it as capital punishment, dates back to at least 8th century BC, but that's in recorded history. And it's understandable. People of the past were different people. They were so much more irrational and fearful. But as time moves on and we wish to learn from our past mistakes, we mustn't intentionally make these mistakes now. It is fair to know that capital punishment is a lot less harsh and we don't have to face the same levels of impalement, crucifixion, asphyxiation through hanging or drowning or being burnt alive. Today, we have the much, much more humane methods of lethal injection, electrocution, lethal gas, hanging and death by firing squad. The reasons of listing all these methods of execution is to show that in actuality, no matter how much the opposition wants to prove it, none of these methods are actually taking away These methods that are taken by human life are neither efficient, practical, or humane. Now, they may argue that the people receiving these penalties deserve these due to their actions. Now, taking this into account, we will refute this by saying, or by asking, are we any better than these people if we succumb to the same level of insolence? Can we not be the people that inspire these individuals to regret their decisions or their mistakes and become objectively better individuals? Is it necessary to take away life to make life better? What is the quality of life if we just kill away our citizens? Capital punishment is obsolete. A method of our forefathers, a method implied because their fears outgrew their moral inclination. Are we to make the same mistakes as them? Death itself is inhumane because it is where life doesn't exist. Where life doesn't exist, what is the point of pushing forward, of becoming better? Retribution in its own right, more death is not necessary to make things better. If you're also fueled by vengeance and start killing off one another, what even is society? Are we to demean the very thing that makes us human? We finally ask again, should we strive to make life better, or should we strive to take life away?
Okay, first things first, Aslan, you've improved a ton since the last time I heard you. But that's for me to tell you personally. But again, beautiful speech. It had a lot. It had a mix, a blend of rhetoric, a blend of factual statements. Very good, very good contextual extensions. Anyways, let's move on. We need not to waste any more time. I'm going to give everyone a personal critique once you ask me to. Let's have Rahman.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So, topic is that is death penalty justified? Now, as we all know that how bad as murder might seem, we can all agree to this point that it is yet a sad and brutal act which is for surely punishable, but to an extent. I know for many it may sound inhumane to leave such a person out there in our world, even if he is caged. But trust me, there are many people who suffer from mental trauma and many mental illnesses, which might have escalated to a point where the person suffering from the illness not might have control to even control himself, or they legit become helpless. Many mental illnesses like psychotic disorders which involve distorted awareness and thinking. Two of the most common symptoms of psychotic disorders are hallucinations, the experience of images or sound that are not real, such as hearing voices and delusions. Now I know that many people are pretty much cynics like me who do not believe in such hallucinations. But in this type of mental disease, many people are helpless except to follow what they see, and when they do commit such a crime, they are put through horrible punishments. An example that I would like to state over here is, for example, Morgan Geezer and Anessa Weir, who were 12 when they decided to commit a murder. They had schizophrenia and psychotic spectrum disorder, and they had stabbed their classmate as a sacrifice to the fictional horror character, as you all might know, Slenderman. Now, there are many certain instances where the criminal himself has to use weapons for his self-defense when being attacked, and in such cases, mainly they are shadowed as criminals in front of the jury when they were just protecting themselves. There is such an example present. For example, in 1925, there was a black American named Ossian Sweet who had purchased a home in an affluent white neighborhood in Detroit on September 8th. He had moved into his new house with his wife and infant daughter, but crowds of several angry-looking people had bashed his home with gangs. There was a large mob of nearly 1,000 people that showed up and began making racist threats. Once the crowd started throwing rocks at the house and rushing towards it, shots were fired from the upstairs window. The bullets ended up killing a man named Leon Brenner and wounded another man in the leg. Now, what I also think that if there was such a case for having such type of revenge, then it would be some type of bloody loop or circle like this. Now listen, if someone kills someone, they die. What about the person that killed them? They would die too. And then some people would definitely come to avenge without caring about laws or anything. It would never stop until everyone is dead. So I oppose this. It should not be justified. If a person is on the trial for murder, then they are on a trial for taking a life that is not theirs to take. Sending a person to a death row is the same thing. A person's life does not belong to the government. Therefore, it should not be the court's decision whether a person lives or not. Also, taking a murderer's life does not bring back the death of the victim, nor does it justify it. Instead of the death penalty for any crime committed, the criminal should be given appropriate numbers of years sentence, which would depend on the intensity of the crime, along with appropriate amount of counseling throughout the sentence. Now, I do also agree that if there is a criminal that has caused or committed murder on purpose, he should be heavily punished with more and more years in confinement unless he has been ready to be released to the society. There are many people who have also been drugged or threatened at point to commit a murder that they are forced to do. In the end, the original criminal can run away clean-handedly without facing any punishment, and the victim who had been targeted to commit murder will have to face severe punishment and remain helpless. In such type of cases, I am against death penalty.
Well, thank you so much, Rahman. Uh,
Welcome, sir.
Rahman, was this your first speech, or have you been doing debates?
Sir, I have been doing debates. Yes, I have been doing debates. I went on some events, not many.
It seems like as such. Well, you'd become a very, very,
Thank you.
very cardinal part of LG Gulberg's team. So I wish you best of luck,
Thank
and
you, sir.
please do message me so that we can talk further about how you delivered your speech. But a very,
Thanks, sir.
very, very, very good speech.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, let's now have. So far, guys, I am very impressed by the standard. Honestly, this is not me, and people who have obviously been under Mir Slan and Fahad and Fawad. They know, people who have already taken debate classes. They know that I don't really give out compliments that often, but for some reason these speeches are very nice. Okay, let's now have. Let's have Taha. Right, Taha, are you in the meeting?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I think I just cut out for a second there. Am I audible completely?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I will now be beginning. I will be talking about two main points of the benefits and necessity of capital punishment. And at the end, I will turn you with the sum of my thoughts. Firstly, deterrence. The death penalty prevents future murders. Society has always used punishment to discourage would-be criminals from unlawful action. Since society has had the highest interest in preventing murder, it should use the strongest punishment available to deter murder, and that is the death penalty. If murderers are sentenced to death and executed, potential murderers will think twice before killing for fear of losing their own life. For years, criminologists have analyzed murder rates to see if they fluctuated with the likelihood of convicted murderers being executed, and the results were inconclusive. Then, in 1973, Isaac Ehrlich employed a new kind of analysis which produced results showing that for every inmate who was executed, 7 lives were spared because others were deterred from committing murder. Similar results have been produced by disciples of Ehrlich in follow-up studies. Moreover, even if some studies regarding deterrence are inconclusive, that is only because the death penalty is rarely used and takes years before an execution is finally carried out. Punishments which are swift and sure are the best deterrent. The fact that some states or countries which do not use the death penalty have lower murder rates than jurisdictions which do is not evidence of the failure of deterrence. States with high murder rates would have even higher murder rates if they did not use the death penalty. Finally, death penalty certainly deters the murderer who was executed. Strictly speaking, this is a form of incapacitation. Similar to the way a robber put in prison is prevented from robbing on the streets, vicious murderers must be killed to prevent them from murdering again, either in prison or in society if they should ever get out. Both as a deterrent and as a form of permanent incapacitation, the death penalty helps to prevent future crime. For those unconvinced about the superior deterrent power of capital punishment, the following argument should dispel them. Granted, we do not know whether capital punishment deters murder better than any alternative penalty. If in fact it does not, we nonetheless execute a murder for the purpose of deterring others. The murderer unnecessarily loses his life due to our lack of knowledge. If, however, on the other hand, capital punishment does deter better and we forego the execution, the innocent victims of those who might have been deterred will lose their lives. The second major point for the necessity of capital punishment is retribution. A just society requires the death penalty for the taking of a life. When someone takes a life, the balance of justice in society is disturbed. And unless that balance is restored, society will eventually succumb to a cycle and rule of violence. Only the taking of a murderer's life restores the balance and allows society to show convincingly that murder is an intolerable crime, which will be punished in kind. Retribution has its basis in religious values as well, which have been historically maintained that it is proper to take an eye for an eye and a life for a life. And although the victim and the victim's family cannot be restored to the status which preceded the murder, at least an execution brings closure to the murderer's family, to the murderer's victim's family, and closure to the all affected by the ordeal, and ensures that the murderer will create no more victims. For the most cruel and heinous crimes, the ones for which death penalty is applied, offenders deserve the worst punishment under our system of law, and that is the death penalty. Any lesser punishment would undermine the value society places on protecting lives. I will now quote Robert Macy, who was district attorney of Oklahoma City, as I believe his quote perfectly sums up this retribution. In 1991, a young mother was rendered helpless and made to watch as her baby was executed. The mother was then mutilated and killed. The killer should not just lie in some prison with 3 meals a day, clean sheets, cable TV, family visits, and endless appeals. For justice to prevail, some killers just need to die. Finally, I'll give you my own thoughts. When there has been brought home to anyone by conclusive evidence the greatest crime known to the law, and when the attendant circumstances suggest no palliation of guilt, no hope that the culprit may even yet not be unworthy to live among mankind, nothing to make it probable that the crime was an exception to his general character rather than a consequence of it, then I confess it appears to me to deprive the criminal of the life of which he has proved himself to be unworthy, solemnly to blot him out from the fellowship of mankind and from the catalogue of the living is the most appropriate, as it is certainly the most impressive mode in which society can attach so great a crime to the penal consequences for which it offers a security of life that
Time.
it is indispensable to an exit. Uh, can I finish my sentence?
Yes.
I defend this penalty when confined to atrocious cases on the very ground on which it is commonly attacked, on that of the humanity of the criminal. Thank you.
Okay. Uh, I'm pretty sure that people are hearing what the speakers are saying. Now, I again, it was a brilliant speech that I really want to critique personally, as in good ways. So do text me asking for a critique of your speech. Let's not waste any more time. But the speech was very well prepared. Okay, it had brilliant panels as I've stated. Let's have Josefa Taj.
Assalamualaikum, sir. Sir, can you hear me properly?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to start by stating what an actual state is. State is a body that reserves the right to violence, the right to maintain order. But killing someone is an extreme violation of human rights. State authorities often misuse the death penalty to fulfill their personal grudges rather than bringing social benefits. We have seen many examples in the history, and currently many examples are going on. I would first of all like to state an example from the US, where in 1950s, the US government tracked down hundreds of US citizens who had a tendency towards socialism or communism, and they were punished to death with charges of traitors. A similar thing is going on currently in China, where the Chinese government is cracking down religious minorities like the Uyghur Muslims and executing them on basis of terrorism. It is clear that these all punishments are being given on basis of personal grudges. We can also think rather than giving death punishments, we can also see that we can also see that uh, sorry, we can also give the amount of monetary funds and time we invest into giving punishments into the culprits. We can also spend all that time and monetary funds in helping the victim's family and relieving them from the tragedy they have been through. And also, uh, since the start of the human civilization, we have seen that the major punishment of most major crimes has been death punishments, and it is clearly visible that death punishments have not had any great effect, as violence is still common in this world. I would like to share the stats from 2015 from United States of America, where the northern states only gave 4 punishments in 2015, and the southern states gave around 2,000 punishments in 2015. And it was clearly visible that violence kept on growing in the southern states, and it was more it than the southern states were more unlivable than the northern states. We must also I would also like to add that rather than giving death penalties, we must choose alternate punishments like life imprisonment and etc. I would like to add that in cases of rape and child abuse, rather than killing the culprit, we must fully punish them by either giving them a life imprisonment or castrating them, which would bring them a more which would make life a much which would make them realize how much difficult they made the other person's life, the victim's life. Sir, I'm done.
All right, thank you very much, Azefa. Very, very well-rounded historical context that you gave to a lot of examples. I really like this speech. Please text me for obviously for a critique at both ends. Let's now, this will be the last speaker for this particular meeting. Guys, please join again. For those who are done already, they can choose not to join again. But obviously, if they want to learn and listen to each other, and it's only going to take at least another 25 minutes. So I would advise you guys listen to each other's speeches as well. But it's not mandatory for you to join. But whoever is left, they can join again after this speech. Let's have Fahad Hayat for the last speech.
Sir, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, and I quote, "The old law of an eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind." First of all, let us talk about how capital punishment, also known as death penalty, came into being. The first established death penalty laws date as far as back the 18th century before Christ in the Code of King Hammurabi of Babylon, which codified the death penalty for 25 different crimes. These death sentences were carried out by such means as crucifixion, drowning, beating to death, burning alive, and impalement, which are all unethical methods. The ethics of the death penalty are clear. Taking a life in punishment for murder is not justice but vengeance. One does not right a wrong by creating another wrong. The usual excuse for executions, that they are a deterrent, has been proven untrue time and time again. There are 8 reasons why these death penalties are not justified. Everyone has an inalienable human right to life under Article 3 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, even those who commit murder. Sentencing a person to death and executing them violates that right. Secondly, the world has seen time and time again that the justice system in every country has major flaws, and capital punishment causes the deaths of innocent people, and if this continues, it will also in the future. Sometimes the judges are corrupted or the witnesses or evidence is incorrect, and eventually all of this leads to the death of an innocent. Thirdly, in a totalitarian government, the government uses the death penalty law as an excuse to silence their opponents or those who are revolting. This leads to deaths of innocents in mass numbers. Fourthly, the vulnerable people in the society like the poor, the LGBTQ+, and the religious minorities are subjected to the death penalty, which is oppression, cruel, and inhuman. Fifthly, Retribution is morally flawed and problematic in concept and practice. Retribution is immoral and it is just a sanitized form of vengeance. To take a life when a life has been lost is revenge, not justice. Sixthly, consequential moral reasoning does not justify the death penalty. It is a theory that suggests an action is good or bad depending on its outcome. If death penalty is practiced and an innocent is killed, the outcome will not be right and would be unjust, and so this is morally incorrect. Seventh, along with consequential moral reasoning, categorical moral reasoning also does not justify the death penalty. It locates morality in certain duties and rights regardless of the consequences. To put it simply, there are certain things that are categorically wrong even if they bring about a good result. Killing a person when another person has just died is not justice in any way, rather is revenge and thus is morally incorrect. And the last point. First of all, utilitarianism is a theory of morality which advocates actions that foster happiness or pleasure and opposes actions that cause unhappiness or harm. Jeremy Bentham gave the clearest explanation of utilitarian moral theory in the 18th century, and it is summed up as the greatest good for the greatest number. Well, seeing that the justice system is flawed and the family of the victim requires blood for the loss of their family member, utilitarianism also does not justify the death penalty as killing an innocent is not for the greater good, and thereby it is concluded that the death penalty is not justified. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fahad. Uh, there's a sort of maturity that is inculcated within the way you speak now. I'm really impressed by your points as well, especially those which rounded some philosophical elements. Although it lacked everyone's speeches a little bit lacked legal reasoning, but on the grounds of let's say morality or on the grounds of analogy, very, 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 very nice. Brilliant parallels again, and very, very impressive use of devices. So we only have 2 minutes left. I'm going to end this right now, and you need to join in again. People who are left are Ibrahim Ahmed, Inam, Abdur Rafe, Raja Ibrahim, Muaz, Saad, Mohib, Rana, Farzan, Fawad, and Abrar. So I'm going to stop it right now. Take a screenshot if you want to of this particular uh, screen, but I'm going to take it and send it in the group. Okay, I'm going to stop it. Guys, please rejoin again. And all those who want to listen to the speeches, they should join in again as well.